Yeah, we're upset about that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Terrible. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Ganster from the Rachel Carson, and this is my husband, Paul Sauers. And Chris is also joining us from Three Rivers Outdoor Company. And first, we wanted to thank Chris. Just a couple housekeeping things. If you want to go ahead and put your comments into chat, Chris is going to field the questions for us. We have you all muted, but at the end, we'll also open it up for questions as well. So Paul and I are both on the Rachel Carson Trails Conservancy Board, and we are both on various committees within the organization, but more importantly, we've hiked the full challenge 4 times and the homestead, which is the half challenge 3 times. So we like to come and talk to people about doing the challenge, and we have done it. I always say we like to talk because we're old, and so that we can show that you don't have to be in your 20s to do it. We are hikers. We hike it. We don't run it. And Chris has run the challenge, so he'll also help us out for those of you that may be interested in knowing more for runners. We are going to share our screen if we can do it successfully, so bear with us.
Can you see that, Chris?
Sure can.
All right.
You're looking good.
So anyways, welcome to the Rachel Carson Trail Challenge Prep Talk. This is what you see when you finish. I'm not sure this year if we'll be having that at the finish line or not. This year, the course goes from Harrison Hills to North Park. Every other year, we flip the direction that it goes. This, people say, is the easier way, if there's an easier way to do 36 miles in one day. So depending, they say it's easier this way because you are hiking the more brutal hills in the beginning and you get them out of the way. Thanks again to Chris and Christine from Three Rivers Outdoor Company for sponsoring our talk tonight and helping it out. Chris and Christine, Three Rivers Outdoor Company, they're one of our sponsors. And the other thing is that they've graciously offered a 10% discount to everybody who is registered for the challenge during the month of April. So if you go in and tell them that you're registered and show them your registration that you're paid, you will get a discount. And if you've never been in there, please make it a point to go in there because they have all sorts of really great gear, which we'll talk about later, what's good to have.
We'll talk about our Rachel Carson Trails Conservancy. We're 100% volunteer organization. So one of the things we do is we're always soliciting for volunteers to help in one of 1,000 ways. There's every way you could possibly help. We have trail stewards, we have trail work days, people serving on committees, we have legal sided things, writing, all types of things. And we maintain a little over 180 miles of trails. The biggest named ones are Rachel Carson Trail. And nowadays it's about 45 miles long. So we tagged it through North Park. And then there's a longer Baker Trail, which is north from Freeport up through Cook Forest. That's 130 some miles. And then the little baby trail, we call it the Harmony Trail. It's a little over a mile. It's a nice flat trail in their neighborhood in Wexford. So we always are soliciting for members. You can become a member for as little as $15. Just helps support. And when I got into this, wasn't sure where the money goes. It's expensive running a conservancy. We actually buy land when we can. And we have projects, you put a bridge in, it costs money. It's just things like that. So always looking for volunteers, always interested. And then we'll talk about the 3 main events we have each year in June. The full challenge, 35 plus miles, probably closer to 36 now. Every year it changes a little because we're continually rerouting the trail for a couple of reasons. Sometimes you lose rights to property. Sometimes when you get off the road. And Kathleen and I are registered for the Homestead Challenge this year. It's about a little over 18 miles. So we call it the half challenge. And there's a Friends and Family Challenge, which is a good get in. You get 5 people in for the registration price of 1, and you just act as a little team. And you still get the pennies. Each person gets a shirt, so it's very nice. The 2 top challenges technically right now are sold out, but you can still get your name in the hat. Because what happens, we find out every year, is people drop out for a variety of reasons. You can get injured. You realize, hey, this is too much, whatever. And then every so often there'll be a computer selection round, so your name's in the hat, and you may get selected for the event. And so we've gone through the registration, paying the fees. Okay.
This year, obviously, well, last year we actually had to, some of you may have already registered last year and found out, obviously, that we had to cancel because of COVID. We were able to successfully host the Baker Ultra in August, and we used many new COVID protocol, which is going to roll over to the Rachel Carson Trails Challenge for this year, which is June 19th. We didn't say what day it was. So the COVID protocol, it's important for everybody to know and understand what it is. We will require everyone to wear masks at the beginning and end and all of the checkpoints. We will be giving masks out to participants. We are not going to have morning shuttles. The morning shuttles will just be too congested. And so therefore all participants have to have rides to the start, or obviously you can park your car to the start as well. But because there's limited parking, we do urge people to have rides and get dropped off. We will also have, we will not also, but we will have shuttles at the end of the day for people who need rides back to Harrison Hills if they've parked there. And on the shuttles, we will be doing safety precautions such as staggered seating. Again, everybody will have to wear masks. The rest areas will be also different. We're still shaping those and seeing how those will develop, but the snacks will be prepackaged and handed out by volunteers. And most likely you will have to give your water, your bladder or whatever you're using to a volunteer who will then fill it. So we're still developing those, but everybody who is in the challenge needs to understand that we will require masks at the checkpoints and at the beginning and the end of the challenge. And again, we also, we don't have the final version of what the picnic will look at this point. We may do box lunches for participants. The COVID protocol is listed on the Rachel Carson Trails Conservancy website. So we do ask that everybody please look them over and you're familiar with them. Again, the biggest changes are there's no morning shuttle bus and everybody will have to wear a mask.
And we have a Safer Trails Committee that's been very busy this last couple of years trying to route the trail as much as possible off roads. And that's where some of the purchasing land, when land or tax delinquent properties come up and it sits somewhere on a trail, we try to purchase that or purchase right-of-ways and things. So that's a good crew. If someone likes doing a day or two of work or something on the trail, that's the kind of activity to volunteer for. It's not like an every day, every week thing. So we're working on, these 2 are nearly complete. We're working through some semantics, but it's good. Every time we get off the road, it's good for us. It's a constant challenge, we'll say.
And if you've done the challenge before, obviously the challenge is different this year because we have done a few major rerouting projects.
We love to talk about the elevations. The full challenge is ticketed at 35.8 miles. It may change a few tenths here and there. People wonder about the 15 hours and 4 minutes. What that is, in Pittsburgh, on the longest day of the year, in theory, there's 15 hours and 4 minutes between sunrise, sunsets. That's where that weird thing comes
and the 15 hours, 4 minutes is the time that you have to be considered a successful challenger.
Doesn't have to take longer than that, but you can see there's a lot of hills, ups and downs. It's about 15,000 feet and all, so just a lot of hills, we'll say. And to do the challenge in that time limit, you're doing about 25-minute miles, something like that. So you can definitely walk it at a steady walk pace and then finish. And the Homestead Challenge is about half of that. So it's about 18.5 miles, about half the time to compete at the same pace. and about 7,000 or 8,000 feet of elevation change, ups and downs along the way.
A good way to prepare for the hike, and everybody has their own different way to prepare. We do have challenge training hikes. There are weekly hikes that increase in length over the course of 2 months. And you actually do hike on the trail, so you'll be replicating what you'll be doing the day of the challenge. And they're led by volunteers, they're swept by volunteers. You will have to bring your own gear, your own mask, snacks, and hydration. And they start in April. Those dates are on the, and we'll show them later as well, but you'll also can go on the website and get the dates.
Interesting about the trail, that's maybe the biggest wild card in the event, is the weather conditions that day and that week. 2019, Kathleen and I did the half challenge. It was the muddiest thing I've ever seen because it rained that whole summer. There's been other times it's been dry and very hot, so you almost have to try to prepare for all that, and that's for sometimes your gear is a challenge too. So you will have some grasses, poison ivy, and things like that. If you're very sensitive to poison ivy, you might want to wear long pants, long shirt. You might want to bring ivy dry or something like that along with you. There's ticks obviously in the trail as you're out in the woods, so they're all things just to consider.
There are several creeks along the way that you will be crossing as well, and about 8 to 9 miles is on roads.
And the food choices, this is quite interesting. There's a lot of good stuff out there to eat, a lot of calories and everything. The key there is don't change the day of or the day before. In other words, if you've eaten a certain type of energy chew or bar and you like it and it doesn't bother your stomach, then bring that. But a good thing too is the checkpoints have enough of this stuff that you don't have to bring 20 pounds of food or water with you. You could replenish at each checkpoint. So what Kathleen and I have done is bring little snacks with us. We're hikers, so it'll take us 2.5 hours or so between checkpoints. So we know that maybe we'll get a little bag of energy chews in the middle to maintain. Water, that's very, very important. The whole hydration part of it, keep drinking Gatorades or some sort of sports drink along the way. It's good, bananas, all that stuff.
And as we know, most of our snacks are considered vegetarian, but we can't accommodate specific dietary restrictions. So if you have certain needs, please be prepared to have somebody help you or take your own snacks. Everybody has different equipment that they feel is best for them. And we always suggest you test your gear, obviously. Hiking boots versus trail running shoes. Very few people do the Rachel Carson challenge in hiking boots, because when you're hiking 36 miles in one day, you often want the lightest shoe that you can get on your foot. Trekking poles versus freehand. It depends again on your style. A lot of hikers will have the trekking poles, some of the runners. The trekking poles are great when you're crossing the creeks. They're great for helping you get through the day, go up and down the hills, keep your balance. Different things that people like to wear. Some people like the long pants. There is poison ivy on the trail, and obviously, like Paul said, there's ticks. Some people like shorts. Some people have the zip-off pants. We've seen just about everything, including jeans. Hydration packs versus water bottles. Depending again on what you're doing, a lot of runners will use water bottles, and maybe Chris wants to talk in a minute about what he uses. Hydration packs are great for the hikers. We have hydration packs. They're also great to carry an extra pair of socks, that sort of thing. Chris, do you use a hydration pack or water bottles?
Great question. Actually, there was a question in the chat, which the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Julie asked, is there a discussion between Gatorade and water using them? And just to kind of very quickly address this one on the surface, Julie, is that yes, Gatorade does give you the electrolytes that you're going to be displacing, so all your salt that you're going to be getting rid of, but the potassium does help with muscle recovery and cramping and that kind of stuff. But you just got to be careful. As they said, you definitely want to test everything before. You don't want to show up day of and figure, Gatorade will do that. It'll be good. For some people, Gatorade's too strong. So sometimes Gatorade and water mix can work really well. I know just for me personally, I have to do like almost a quarter Gatorade to water. As the race goes on further and further, my tolerance for sweets goes down further and further. So it's just kind of, you got to know yourself. There's just as many people who think that water is just as important as Gatorade, so forth and so on. So just make sure you have a plan and you stick to that plan, more or less. But to address your, go ahead.
Sorry, Chris. I was just gonna follow up to what you're saying. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on what you were saying.
No, go right ahead.
I alternate. When I first get into the rest areas, I'll drink Gatorade. And then sometimes I'll put like a cup of Gatorade in my hydration pack. But I agree with Chris, like you have to, and depending on the day too, because if it's a hotter day, which it seems like most of them have been, but I'll alternate when I get in there. And then, and what do you do, Paul?
What I've done is at the checkpoints, I'll drink a Gatorade, and sometimes there's a Scratch Labs, that's a nice hydration powder you could buy. I might actually put a little powder in a Gatorade, drink that, but always have water in my pack. So I get a little bit of electrolytes at the checkpoints and drink water between the checkpoints. And that's worked pretty good for me. But like Chris and Kathleen said, you got to see what works for you. Everybody's different. Their tolerance, how much they sweat. I'm a pretty heavy sweater, so if I hike all day, I literally have white crystals on my forehead. And so I probably sweat a lot more salt than maybe someone else would.
For sure.
And that just goes back to the whole thing of knowing your body and knowing what's good for you, and it ties into tying in what shoes are good for you. Don't wait till that day to wear brand new shoes. And people usually wear a lighter, more breathable trail shoe than a heavier hiking boot, just because it's a long day. The socks, it was funny, I said, I never in my life thought I'd be paying $25 or $30 for socks until I started hiking for the Rachel, and it's definitely worth getting really good socks, depending on what you like to wear. I personally like PhD Smart Wool socks. But there's a lot of good socks out there. Socks are super important. And again, if you're gonna spend money on something, spend it on socks. Somebody asked also about Gore-Tex shoes. You'll go into creeks where you might have water past the top of your shoes, so therefore the Gore-Tex isn't going to do you any good.
We always say that at the shop, Kathleen, that if you know you're doing that, it's waterproof on the outside, but that means it's also waterproof on the inside too.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Most certainly. And then a couple other questions that people had just real quick. Lauren, we'll get your question in 1 second, but Troy had asked, would you recommend water with added electrolyte powders as needed? Troy, that's what I do. I have a mix that's called Tailwind that I use. It's an electrolyte powder. It also has calories in it as well. So I don't have to eat quite as much stuff. So I'm drinking calories while I'm going. But again, I know people that Tailwind doesn't work for them because it has too much sodium and they start to cramp up for it. Oh. So this is the time when you want to just start playing around with everything. Go out for a 10-mile hike and try something from Noon, try something from Tailwind, try Gatorade, and see which one makes you feel better. See which one you have the same energy, but just make sure you're prepping everything the same. Don't eat pasta the night before, then do Gatorade, and then not eat the night before and do Tailwind and be like, oh man, this Tailwind stuff doesn't work. I'm dragging today. Like, well, So, and then one of the other questions that came up was, is it worth bringing extra socks or a blister kit? I personally would say it depends on the year. I think extra socks are useful if it's extremely wet. If it's dry, I don't really think so. And towards the blister kit, I always take a little mini, it's like an aluminum, for lack of a better way to say it. It looks like a little mini bullet. And inside of it, I keep 2 ibuprofen and I keep a couple of pieces of moleskin, which is basically a blister kit. So if I need it, it's there and it's watertight and it doesn't take up very much room. So that one works.
Another thing we can say too is there's the checkpoints along the way and other places to park along the trails. What we've seen people do is meet people at checkpoints, and I've seen them change out their shoes or socks or shirt, whatever works out best for them. You can carry the, I've been lucky. I've never gotten a blister during the event. I've really researched my socks and try to get this right sock shoe combination. It's like a good carpet with a lousy pad. If you have good shoes and bad socks, it doesn't do any good either if you want to kind of blend both together and size them right. Because during the day, your foot, they say, will swell about a half a size because of the long hike.
I've
Very true.
Yeah, and Chris, I agree with you as far as I mean, if it's a rainy, muddy day, I don't change my socks because I'm basically just changing them out to muddy up another pair of socks. But depending, I think of the 7 times we've done it, I've changed socks once.
Yeah, so, and there was one other question that Lauren had asked. She said, appreciate the gear discussion. Is there anything that's mandatory that you have to bring with you? I think the answer is no, aside from your little chip that you have to get scanned. But is there anything that's mandatory?
Clothes.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, nothing.
A mask.
Yeah, this year a mask.
A mask.
No,
there's nothing. And we'll talk about the chip.
And I guess before we get there real quick, I wanted to answer what the first question you actually asked me, which I still haven't answered, was pack or vest or whatnot. It's very personal. I personally feel that if I'm hiking and I'm not going to be running, hydration packs are perfect because you can keep extra supplies with you. You're going to be out there longer, so you might get a little more swing in temperatures. If you're running, this is very, very personal. Just like Paul, I sweat like crazy. So on a warm day, I have to bring a bladder on my back. Yeah. I have to carry that much water with me. Otherwise, I'm going to get dehydrated. Once you are, you're done. You're so far deep in the hole that it's hard to catch back up. But I wear a running vest, and then me personally, I'll normally do my bladder with some kind of, as I said, tailwind, but any kind of hydration powder in my vest. And then I'll wear 2 body bottles on my chest with just water. So I can kind of be going back and forth, going with it. And then Nathan just asked if crews are permitted. I don't believe so, Nathan. That's correct, guys, right? There's no crews. Well, you can't have somebody, a crew is somebody who would be waiting for you to have special supplies for you. Traditionally, in longer races, in ultra marathons or whatnot, you'll have a crew of people that's waiting at a checkpoint to say, "Hey, here's extra food."
You can have a crew. You can have. I just wanted to make sure they didn't mean like a pacer or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you could have people waiting for you at like if you know where there's an intersection where the trail crosses a road, you can have somebody bring you a new pair of shoes. Your socks. We have a lot of people that do that. And Paul and I actually worked crew for friends of ours a few years ago. So yeah, you can have people that bring you, some people like to have a certain snack or whatever. And a lot of times at the rest areas or intersections, families will be there to cheer their loved one on. So yes, we do.
Water consumption, I found that I use about 70 ounces or so of water between checkpoints when we hike it. So I'd have like a 2 to 3 liter pack. I usually keep a small, like 12-ounce Gatorade in there just in case. I'm run out of water between checkpoints. But so you'll find by doing these practice hikes, what is your water consumption? Are you a hiker? If you're a runner, it would be less. A hiker more because it takes you longer between points. That's all just getting to know things.
In addition to the training hikes, we also have the Barb Peterson Memorial Orientation hikes, and they're longer hikes that there are a series of hikes over the course of 2 weekends that are closer to the challenge. And again, this is a nice time to get some actual trail time. They're not supported again. They can be strenuous, but so there's 2 sets of hikes. You can do the training hikes and the Barb Peterson Memorial hikes.
These are, we jump over a slide. Yeah, so this is all on a website, but the 8 goal training hikes start on Sunday, April 18th and go 8 Sundays in a row. And each one gets a little longer, a little hillier along the way. And there's a lot of description on the website, where you start, where you finish. So that's the 8 weeks in a row of those. And they try to set those hikes in a way that you're going to be doing the same pace you need to do in a day to challenge to finish in the official time. And then the other set was the one Kathleen just mentioned, the Bart Peterson ice. It breaks the trail into 4 pieces. So over 2 weekends, you've done the entire trail, so you're familiar with all the trail. You know, it's blazed pretty well, but every now and then you have to keep track and make sure you don't miss a blaze. There's enough people doing it that day, you're not likely just to wander off somewhere and, you know, get real lost. And here's what we usually ask if people know about the blazes. Well, the Rachel blazes are yellow. And if you see a single blaze like on the left, that means you're just going the most logical straight direction. The second one, the top blaze is to the left, you're turning left, turning right. Now the end of the trail one we don't really use. So they're the main 3 blaze styles. Or they can go like this and go crazy.
This is probably the most the most marked area of the trail. The blazes are on, you'll find blazes just about everywhere. Obviously, like Paul said, this one is, you know, it's on the trees, and you can see across the creek up on the guardrail, there's a yellow blaze there. So this is obviously one of the creek crossings. We've got blazes on towers, on the ground. And one of the things we always tell people, if you find yourself walking and you're not sure if you're going the right way, turn around and see if you see any yellow blazes behind you, because the trail goes both ways. So if Paul and I always call them comfort blazes. If we haven't seen a blaze for a while, we stop and take stock, just to make sure. The last thing you want to do is go up an extra hill. And so you want to make sure that you're on the trail. The one year that Paul and I did the challenge, we saw a guy he had made a wrong turn, and we yelled and got him back. And he was very grateful, because he would have, God only knows where to be at this point.
4 miles into the hike, who knows?
Whoa.
So the day before the challenge is, like every other race, know your body, know what you're doing. Can somebody needs to mute themselves? But anyways, you know yourself, know how you do in a long-term event. You're going to want to hydrate yourself, obviously, eat well. Carb loading really is a thing. And Kristen mentioned earlier about pasta. We always eat pasta the night before. Check your bag, make sure you have what you need, and try to get a good night's rest. That's usually pretty difficult, because you're anticipating the event and you're probably pretty psyched, but it's a good thing to do.
The other thing about hydration too is, if you haven't gone to the bathroom or felt the need to go to the bathroom in an hour or two, you may be on the verge of dehydrating. So you want to drink enough to kind of stay ahead of that.
The day before the challenge, you will have a chance to check in and pick up your fob. And Chris had mentioned the fob earlier. Everybody has a little fob that's about 1.5 inches big that you can attach to your shirt, attach to your backpack, and everybody will have a number assigned to them that's on your fob. So you can check in the night before at North Park at the Harmer Shelter between 5 and 8 p.m. Again, masks will be required. And one common question we get is, if you're hiking with friends, can you pick up other people's fobs? And yes, you can. It's also a good opportunity if you have some last minute questions and, you know, just anything like that. It's a good chance to talk to some veteran challengers. You can also pick up your fob in the morning. We have registration at 5 a.m. so you can get there early and pick up your fobs and check in as well.
Now, the key to this fob thing is it's a little computer chip that's read by the computer. So you see him, guy in the orange, getting read there, and in the basket there's a reader. So that you'll hear your name and number if they've read it. So say number 365, you know, Smith. So that's good, you know, they have it then. So basically the very beginning of the event, you scan. This is at the start here, and then there's 4 checkpoints. You'll scan each of the checkpoints, and then you'll scan at the finish. That way the system can keep track of you throughout the day. And there's also a text number you can dial in to see if your friend has passed a certain checkpoint or something. So make sure you do that. You hear your name. If you don't hear your name or something, make sure they get it. Otherwise, you'll be considered an unofficial finisher if you're not scanned at one of the checkpoints.
And this is a good time to talk about etiquette on the trail. And you can see here that people are lined up. Obviously this year we'll have masks on, but if you're a runner or somebody who's quicker, and one thing we will do, we will put people who are runners at the front of the pack, if you will. So we try to start the runners before the hikers just to let them get through. But the other thing is, if you are passing somebody on the trail, it is up to you to go around that person. It's asking people to move off the trail for you to run around them is not really cool trail etiquette on the Rachel. Again, if you want to run around somebody, great. You know, obviously you can let them know you're there. But there's places on the trail that are one person. And so that if you have to pass, that's up to you to do it, not for them to stop, move out of your way, that sort of thing.
Another thing about the start, your start time is your start time. So if you're a hiker and you're starting 5 minutes behind the runners, it doesn't matter because your clock starts when you get scanned at the very beginning.
A couple of questions from the chat, guys. One question, does the race end at the Harmer shelter again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, North Park is always where we do the pre-registration the night before. So
Okay.
yes, this year it starts in Harrison Hills. It always starts right around the Homestead for the half challenge, the Homestead challenge, and it'll end in North Park this year. So even though we're starting in Harrison Hills, our pre-registration is always the night before in North Park.
And it's the day of, oh, sorry, Kathleen, go ahead.
No, that's okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, there was a question, is the day of registration in North Park or is it going to be at Harrison Hills?
Oh, no, that's a good question. It's at Harrison Hills.
Harrison Hills at the start.
Yeah, at the start. It's always at the start. That's a great question.
And then one last one. Paul, you referenced going to the bathroom every 1 to 2 hours. Are there bathrooms / porta-johns spaced out along the trail?
No, there's restrooms at the rest areas. Otherwise, you grab the nearest tree.
You go through Emberling Park, there's a restroom there, and I don't know what the sheets became. There's a sheets we used to pass by people would use. So yeah, other than that, you do the woods in between this. But every checkpoint, they're multiple.
Oh, somebody just said there's no sheets this year. The sheets was closing and we weren't sure.
I used to call that my Mecca. I used to love running there and getting something.
One thing that I'll point out on this checkpoint slide is the volunteers will all have the same color shirts on. I don't know if we've even decided this year yet. So if you see somebody in one of the volunteer shirts, you know, obviously feel free to ask them questions if you are in distress or whatever. Obviously, you can ask them. One of the things we always tell people, if you need picked up, if you can't finish, that's up to you. We don't have Ubers sitting at the checkpoints. We don't have people sitting there waiting to drive you to your car. It's up to you if you have to stop to get a ride back. The other thing we ask is if you have loved ones who want to know if you've come through yet, you can register and they can check. It's really very hard when volunteers are working, scanning people, and somebody comes over and says, my daughter's Kathleen Ganster, has she scanned in yet? We don't have time to look through 1,000 people to see if they've come through.
That's a Jeff with a text number. I saw one question about the Homestead Challenge. That one you check in if you're checking in the morning of at the start of the Homestead Challenge in the parking lot near Springdale High School. I saw that question pop up in chat.
Perfect, thank you. I was about to ask you guys.
Again, we'll have water and Gatorade at the rest areas. The style of which we'll do it, we're not 100% certain at this point. We're not going to have people individually reaching in. And then again, this is just the Bull Creek checkpoint, which will be the first one this year on the challenge.
Kind of coming down the road this year, you'd be coming out of the woods. That was one of the reroutes.
And you can see it's pretty obvious where you scan in.
Yeah, you usually have a sign. There's usually volunteers pointing things out.
Sarah, I just saw your question pop up. Yes, if you drop out early, you should let the volunteers know. First of all, you have to turn your fob back in. And the second thing is, yes, we like to know, we like to know that we don't have any bodies that we have to go out and pick up.
We do have sweeps after each checkpoint closes to check for people, but that's good. And then you can still get your T-shirt. Otherwise, you turn your fob in and you go pick up your T-shirt at the finish.
And then question in the chat about where the 7 mile begins.
It's in Heartwood Acres. So you come out of Spur at Heartwood Acres and then head towards North Park.
Perfect. And then the second part of her question is it marked on the website where to go?
Yeah. And if you have any questions, we'll have our emails up at the end. But yeah, it'll be pretty much there. There's a description for each of the 3 events that you can tunnel into and print out your specific event or look for it.
Again, there's a lot of creek crossings during the day, so you obviously should be prepared. And oh gosh, I don't even remember what year it is. The one year Paul and I were doing the full challenge, we had a thunderstorm in the middle of the event. And at the end of we were going the same direction that we went this year. And at the end, when we were near North Park, we were in creeks that were up to my thighs. So it was pretty, it was a really quick, fast storm. And so you could be, we're not just like the picture here, it's just like, looks like a little tiny creek crossing. You can be at places where it's, well, that year it was up to my thighs, so.
Real quick, guys, we have a couple questions come up. One you can probably do while we're answering the other one. Sean and Nikki asked if you could go back to the checkpoint slides again. They were curious about that. And then there was another question about if you know the likelihood of a spot opening for the full challenge, which obviously is hard to answer. But
yeah, hard to answer now. I think right now there's 730 people that are registered in there. In the ideal world, we'd like to start somewhere in the low 600. So Steve, our main guy, has estimated that number will drop down to about. So there's not going to be a lot of spots available, but they could randomly come up over the next few weeks. So, and if you do get accepted, you will get an email confirmation. Then you have a week to pay. So,
the other thing is you can always show up the morning of the event with the off chance that people don't come and you can get a place in the challenge. That's a lot of training to do in case the place doesn't open up. But there can always be last minute, particularly if you see that it's going to be really hot, if it's been really rainy, you know, depending on the conditions, there can be people that I mean, there's always people that don't show up, but obviously at this point, we can't tell how many. Yeah.
Someone had asked about a checkpoint. So I'm not sure what the question was about the checkpoint.
oh yeah, there was just somebody they just went back and see the it was oh, there we go. It was Sean and Nikki asked that if they could go back to the different checkpoint slides. I'm not quite. If you could clarify, this is Sean and Nikki, what you were looking for there. And also, while we're looking for that answer, Anna had asked if, kind of as Eileen asked, if there was a chance of the full challenge opening. If you're not currently registered, can you still show up for the training hikes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're open to anybody that wants to. I think sometimes I've actually said to people, it might be a good idea to work a year in advance. In other words, if you haven't done something like this before, get involved in the training hikes. You can start kind of ratioing yourself. You know, if you haven't done long distance hiking, you do one of the 10-mile training hikes, will give you a feel for, you know, where am I on this skill? I got to work more, less, that kind of thing. Yeah, they're open to anybody all the time. We have seasonal hikes also, when the world's normal, winter hikes, fall hikes, that type of thing. So keep an eye on the web for those types of things.
So the question came back, they were just curious if you had pictures of the second and the third checkpoints. That was all.
No, we don't. Sorry, we don't have pictures of.
But they're all pretty much structured the same, where they tuck in.
And obviously there's lots of hills, and the conditions on the hills can be, here you can see that it's a pretty narrow stretch through grass. We always laugh because there's places that it looks like a mass exodus, that when you see people on the hills. One of the things that's important for us to note too is that when you're on the road, those are still working roads. So you know, when we're traversing on the roads for the Rachel, you will want to make sure that you're aware that there could be traffic. And one of the real sort of dangers of the route that the Rachel goes this year is toward the end, you will cross Route 8. And that's always a little bit of a tricky endeavor. We always joke that at that point, you might just feel like throwing yourself in the middle of the road. But there, because of the way that the challenge goes this year, they don't close off Route 8. If we start in North Park, there's usually police officers there for about the first 45 minutes because the bulk of the hikers come through during that time. When we go from Harrison Hills to North Park, we've got hikers and runners coming through all day. So you do have to be a little bit more aware when you're crossing Route 8 that it can be a tricky place. They do put up pylons on the road, but there aren't any traffic stoppages. We go through a lot of private property on the Rachel, and we always tell people in training hikes, anytime you're out on your own and during the day of the event, please be respectful. We are there by the goodwill of the people who own the trail. We don't own we own parts of it, but we don't own all of it. So we ask people that when you're on the trail, if you had 1,000 people crossing through your yard, you would want to do the same courtesy that we ask. If there's a fence that sometimes there's gates that we open, we ask you to close them. Obviously carry out all of your containers and garbage, that sort of thing. So please be respectful. We have lost rights on property because of hikers that aren't courteous. And quite honestly, it's usually not hikers, it's usually bikers or motor bikers, but we really do try to be aware of that.
Like I said, we have the friends and family challenges where often a lot of the young kids could hike with older brothers and sisters, parents, cousins, whatever. It's formed fun little people of 5 groups.
This is just a picture to show you all the different types of terrain. This is close to the end by North Park. Right by North Park, when you're on the last 2 miles, you'll have railroad tracks. It seems like people often say, if the weather's bad, do you postpone the hike? So this photo explains.
I took that picture right. I'm like sitting in my car waiting for Kathleen, the guy who's hiking with to come by. But yeah, you can see these hills can get very muddy and very slippery sometimes. That's where trekking poles are my lifesaver, going up and down things like this for personally. And you can see it gets a little crowded. People are going off to the side, trying to figure out how best to get around. And there's a family group.
And this is at the end of the challenge. This is actually in, is this in Harrison Hills? Is it North Park?
Yeah,
it's a great feeling when you're done. We have people that hike together with friends and family. This year, I don't think we'll have the showers. This is Harrison Hills, and typically in North Park. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We probably will not. I can't.
Let's see, just had another question come in. Is the Egan Park checkpoint in the parking lot off Riddle Run Road? Or do you have to enter the park and take the one spur trail once you start going up and down the hills along the river?
Nowadays, the checkpoint's right at that entrance off of Riddle Run Road. It used to be up in the park. You'd have to hike about a quarter mile off the trail to get to the checkpoint in the park. But now it's down right next to the road. There's a real small little parking area there.
This is the picnics of the past, the ghost of picnics in the past. Again, we don't know what shape the final picnic will take. I'm sorry, the picnic at the end, I should say. But we typically, it's like, you know, everybody celebrates finishing, obviously.
And this is interesting here. People get curious about, well, what age group does the challenge? You can see it's in the 30 to 50 range. It's a pretty high percentage. I took some quick stats today. The average age of everybody that's registered is about 42 or 3 right now. And the youngest, we got someone at 76 who registered for the full challenge, and as young as 14 for the full challenge. And the homestead as young as 12 and as old as 80. So it's quite a range of ages that do the challenge. And then the finish times are interesting too. Now, what I consider hiking times are anywhere from the upper 11 hours to 15 or 16. That's if you hike the whole thing. The next band, like down to about 8 or 9 hours, that's your run mixes. The people that maybe run the flats, the slight downhills, that type of thing. Then you can see there's very few people. We've had one person ever do it under 6 hours. They're the ones that run a majority of it, and that's a big time rarity. This really truly isn't a running event. In fact, we call it a challenge, not a race. So your time's tracked. We don't give first, second, third prizes for time ratings. Basically, you're challenging yourself.
You know, just real quick, Paul, let me hop on that and parlay on that. That's one of the things I always tell people. I've done a lot of ultra marathons and a lot of regular marathons, and they definitely bring on a certain type of people. I know the first time I did Rachel Carson, I showed up in like full ultra marathon regalia, vests and super short shorts, and people were just staring at me like, "Whoa, who is this guy? What does he think he's doing?" It was definitely comical. I think everybody was wondering why I was just wearing underwear when I showed up with like 3-inch shorts, especially because I'm not the smallest guy of all time. But that's one of my absolute most favorite things about the challenge is that you show up and you're like, huh, this is awesome. You never get to see this many people doing an event like this. The diversity of people's experiences and who they are and what they've done is just, it's outstanding. It's so
I always love the stories when someone's really for the first time trying something like this. And we always tell them, just go out and do the most you can that day, whatever it is. You know?
And it is pretty fun because we do have, it is such a diverse group, you know, and we have people who are slower hikers like Paul and I. We've got the runners, we've got people in between. We have family groups who do it. A real good friend of mine will do it with her sisters and her nieces. We've done it with, a couple of years ago, I did it with my son's roommate, and we've done it with our son. It's just a really, really, really awesome event. One of the favorite things that Paul and I like to talk about are when people are done, you'll see people at the end and they'll say, this is terrible. I never should have done this. And one of Paul's favorite stories is a letter that he got a few years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. This guy had come to one of our talks. We were doing them. So he signed up and he did it, and he was in terrible shape afterwards. He was all mad at his girlfriend for letting him do it and everything else. But then the next morning he wakes up starting to think about what kind of shoe can I get for next year. So I've heard a guy without even stopping breathing say, this is the worst, most horrible thing I ever did. Are you doing it again next year? To his friend. I was sitting there drinking at the picnic going, damn, I wish I could have recorded that. That's what it is. There are times during the day people have done ultra stuff. There are times you're not going to feel real well, probably. Then you get over it. And then when you're done with it, you say, well, I really did the best I could here. I feel all right.
My favorite story is my daughter. When I had my daughter, I was in labor for about 40 hours. And she said, Mom, was this, is this like labor? And I said, no, because in labor, you can't leave. But with the challenge, you can get off. So you really have to dig inside. 36 miles is a lot of hiking in one day, and it's it's a challenge.
Well, think about getting off too. Anything you bring with you, wrap it in some kind of plastic or something, cell phones, everything, because you will sweat through anything there is. So I had some stuff in my pack. The first time I ever did, it was totally ruined. Never holy hell had a map with me. It was just in crumbles. So yeah, so pack. We always carry a cell phone just in case. Who knows? You might want to call a friend. You're cramping up real bad or something.
In addition to the
real quick, Kathleen, let me interrupt before you hop into Baker. Couple of questions. I had a question about suggestion on weekly mileage for training. I just kind of quickly responded on the chat. It's very different for each person. But I don't know if you guys have any suggestions. I can throw out suggestions.
What I kind of suggest is a blended hike and ramping up. Like by our practice hikes, you see we stop them about 21, 22 mile hike. So logic there is that any one given day, if you can hike that far on the trail, you'll probably be able to make it. So Kathleen and I have done combinations of hiking, kind of a fast, flatter distance hike, maybe shorter hikes. We've got the biggest hills on the trail. We kept doing them like a U, up and down, up and down, up and down. So if you combine everything, you can probably get away for as little as like 30 miles a week or something like that, depending on how you ramp up to it and combine your training, because the hills will beat your thighs up. So it's definitely a good idea to get on hills somewhere, if not the trail, anywhere where you're climbing challenging hills. The footing is not always the best. It makes it hard. Sometimes you're climbing over roots, slippery rock, and so it makes the same hill harder because you're slipping.
That's very true. Well, one of the suggestions we always say when you're doing ultra training is try and get 2 or 3 days together, because by that third day, you're going to be replicating the fatigue that you're going to be seeing later on. So you don't want to go out and replicate the race, because the chance of you randomly hurting yourself doing 30 some miles is greatly increased versus 10 miles. But if you can do 10 miles on a Friday, 10 miles on a Saturday, by the time you hit mile 5 on Sunday on your third day, your muscles are fatigued. You're going into that weird, as Lauren said, tier 2 fun. It just sucks while you're doing it, but it's great afterwards. You're going into what I call the pain cave. You're just like deep inside your own mind, and it's terrible. And you kind of learn that a lot of the times your body could do it. There's no question about it. It's just whether or not your mind can do it.
Yeah.
You push your body there. So it definitely helps to, as weird as this says, as weird as it sounds, just go put yourself in that scenario. Go to North Park and go do a couple of 9-mile loops, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And on the third day, when you're on mile 27, you're going to find out what that feels like. What does leg feel like? And I know for me, like, I get into this weird mental spot where I'm like, oh, I definitely hurt my knee. I should just quit. Like, no, you're just tired. Keep going. You're not hurt. You're just tired. So it's a matter of figuring out where your tired is and where your hurt is also. So kind of seeing what your body can do without hurting yourself.
It's getting to know yourself and your limits and stuff. Yeah. Very
much so. And we also had a question saying, did you say there's already 700 people confirmed?
Yeah. I think we're sitting at 730 right now, actually.
730 for the full, and how many for the homestead? 340 for the homestead.
We're both theoretically sold out, but we know every year people drop out for a variety of reasons. A wedding comes up, they get hurt training, just something. There's a lot of things happen, so definitely keep your name in the hat.
This is a great question from Jason. How should I anticipate my body to react immediately, next day, the week, so forth and so on afterwards? My answer to that is that, first off, it's directly congruent to what your training has been. If you've kept up with really good training, you'll feel really good when you're done with it. And then a couple hours later, your whole body will just lock up because you're just really, really exhausted and tired. And depending on how old you are, I know I've found that almost every decade I go through, the fatigue increases in another day. Yeah. So cresting 40 this year, I found that if I really push myself beyond where I am, it's day 3 and day 4 that I'm feeling really, really tired and just a little sluggish. So it all depends, Jason. It's just I also know people. There's a buddy of mine that ran it 2 years, did it in 6 hours, and we went mountain biking the next day, and he was just fine.
A few years ago, there was a 73-year-old woman who was the oldest to do the challenge, and I called her a couple of days later just to write a little blurb about her, and she was hiking in Vermont. And she's like, oh, I feel perfectly fine. And I was like, well, damn.
That was pretty impressive. I know. Kathleen and I have a funny story. It's the day after the first challenge we did. There used to be a little diner here in Rod 8 that has like 2 or 3 steps up into the diner. And we looked like old people walking up those steps. So we were so tired the next morning. But we were well trained. And a couple of days later, we felt all right. I even played basketball that following Monday, which I couldn't do now.
Yeah, I probably would not schedule any big social events the next day just to give yourself a chance to recover. Our other big event is our Baker Trail Ultra Challenge, and it's a 50-mile ultra on the Baker Trail. It takes place on August 28th. Unlike the Rachel, that is a race, and you can do it as on your own or on a relay team, and the challenge there is to finish in 14 hours or less. The race starts at 6:30 a.m. The finishing time is 8:30. It's up in Smicksburg's, PA this year. And there's more information on the.
Now, what Chris told me is kind of funny. We have 3 different badges. There's 3 sections of the trail. And you have one of them, right, Chris?
I do. Yep.
Now his son loved the little badge, so now Chris got to do the two other segments.
Yeah, every time there's 3, as you can see the medal, there's 3 different sections on the bottom, and every time you do it, each each part of the Baker is a different, unique piece.
It's a much smaller number of people's event, 70 people, maybe do it 80 people. We're trying to get up to about 100, but it's a much smaller event than the Rachel Carson.
It's a great event. It's fantastic. And as I said, there's 3 different medals for 3 different sections that go in concurrent years. So I missed last year, which means I got to wait another 3 years to get that medal.
Yeah.
As Paul said, my son has all my medals and whatnot from all my ultras. He has them in his room. And that's what he said. I got done. And he was like, well, where are the rest of my medals, Dad?
Oh, that's funny.
Thanks, buddy.
Maybe
you know, actually, well, one other quick question came in. To new runners on this trail, practice uphills, but don't ignore the downhills. Those eccentric muscle contractions kill your legs more than the uphill sections. Lindsay's dead on with that. Yeah, most certainly. Just try and make sure you're training for both of them.
Yep, I have a weird thing. I go down some of the steep hills backwards, almost in a push-up position. So if I fall, I'm only gonna do a push-up fall. It looks weird, but it saves my thighs.
Very true.
We have a couple other things on the trail, just of interest to people. We have the Rachel Carson Trails Conservancy Geo Trail for people who do geocaching. We have a series of 40 geocaches that people can go, and if you get 26 of the caches, you can earn a commemorative coin. If you do all 40, you can do another. And we just started a new program for children, the Mini Geo Trail, and again, all the information is on our website. We also have a 100-mile quest. If you're training for the Rachel or the Ultra, this is a great thing to get. It's patterned after North Country Trails 100-mile quest. If you do 100 miles within a calendar year on the Baker Trail, the Harmony Trail, the Rachel Carson Trail, you can earn a really awesome patch and a certificate.
You can do the same mile 100 times. That's the cool thing about it.
One thing that people may or may not have heard of or be aware of is karma. If you volunteer for the Rachel, if you've participated in events, you can earn karma. And if the event is almost sold out, people with karma have a greater chance of getting in than people without karma. And so if you don't get in this year, there's opportunities to volunteer. You can start working on your karma, so next year you have a leg up.
The interesting thing also about getting in, we don't like to sell sponsorships this way, but for a $250 sponsor, you get an entrance with that. So if someone can't get into the challenge, maybe has a little business or some sponsors in some way, you get a sponsor thing for that.
Real quick, speaking of getting in, Sarah just asked, are volunteers still needed for event day? I don't know what your answer is going to be, but I'm going to say, of course, most certainly.
Of course, yes. We always need volunteers. And particularly this year, we're going to need more volunteers because of social distancing and the extra activities that we'll be doing. You know, in the past, people would come in and just grab their own snacks. Now volunteers. Yes, Sarah, that's the right answer. We always need volunteers.
On the main webpage, there's a volunteer link. You click and you end up sending an email to our volunteer coordinator, Donna Stoltz. So, and there's lots of rules for volunteers on challenge day. There's all kinds of things.
The other thing is that if you can't get in, it's a great, but the year before I did my first challenge, I volunteered because I wanted to know what it was all about. I wanted to see what it was all about. I wanted to just get an idea. And so it's a great way to learn more about the event. These are our emails. If you have any questions, we would be more than glad to assist you so you can take a screenshot or whatever. But we have people all the time that reach out to us afterwards and ask a question. I'm going to turn.
Real quick, Kathleen. Bryce asked, are there coordinates, are there addresses for the start finish so they can coordinate rides?
Yeah. There's a cool thing on the website now to ask you the event descriptions for each event. You can click on all that, but within the main webpage now under the trail, you can set up your own hikes and you can start anywhere and finish anywhere in the trail. And you can click there and get coordinates from those parts of the map. So if anybody needs any help with that, they could email me. I could send them some stuff, explain that a little better. But yeah, you'll be able to get GPS coordinates to everything.
Other questions?
Yeah, and then I guess you guys put your email addresses up there. There's some days I don't normally at the shop on Sundays, but if you have any questions for me, normally if we're open, I'm here for the most part. So yeah, you're welcome to stop on in, ask us questions over here, and I can always get a hold of these guys as well.
It's kind of, it's sort of sad really, because one of the fun things for us is doing the talks and seeing all of your faces, because then we'll see you on the day of the event, and that's always cool. So because of Zoom, we can't see you. So if you see us on the day of the event, please feel free to just come up and say, hey, you know, we were at the talk, because it's kind of a drag not being able to see all in person, but we'll see.
Yeah, it'd be hard now because we've run into people when, you know, we did a talk 7 years ago, and we see them on the trails. Hey, remember us at the talk? I said, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Quick question came in from Julie asking where Three Rivers Outdoor Company is. Julie, we're located in Regent Square. We're right on Braddock Avenue, right next to D's and Dogs, to the top of the hill. Nice big parking lot right up there.
Yep.
If you weren't here earlier, Paul and I have our Three Rivers shirts on representing our buddies, but if it's a great store, like if you need help on getting fitted for the right shoe, if you need shorts. Yeah, Paul just got a new shirt there. So these guys know what they're doing, which is great. Plus they're just so darn nice.
Don't tell anybody, and everybody's going to come.
Exactly. Seriously. Any other questions?
Let's see. There was one from Lindsay. When this meeting used to be in person, you could pick up a very detailed trail map with turn-by-turn directions. Is there an updated PDF copy of this map, or could we print one out?
So part of the problem is the trail has changed so much. Lindsay, did you get our email? Because you can email us and we can see. In fact, we have Rachel Carson trail guides that Chris is always doing such a good job selling. And we're so busy updating them all the time. We don't even have any left right now. We can try to help you out, Lindsay, if you want to email us. If you didn't get it, it's Ganster, KGANSTER @verizon.net. And we can see what we can do for you.
And then that trail thing I talked about, Rachel Carson Trail, the main part of the website, you click on things and it's pretty much explode the map in a way you get a real good feel for how it goes.
We lost Chris.
There we go. All right, I got to press the right button. Is there a GPX file for this year, or would it be similar to previous years?
Overall, it's similar with a couple reroutes in mind. I mean, the reroutes will be flagged and marked pretty well. But yeah, it's probably 90% similar, 5 or 10% reroute. Because when you come to the first checkpoint this year, you used to walk down over a mile road, but now you come through the woods to get there. That's probably the biggest single change of the trail. Some people like that, some don't. Sometimes the road's easier than hiking through the woods. Depends.
Are we good?
Any last questions, gang? Anybody?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Chris, for hosting us.
Thanks.
You bet. You bet. Appreciate it, guys.
Buy your gear.
See you guys. Take care.
Have a great evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.